Sarah Jenkins hurried through the bright hallways of Atlanta Rehabilitation Center on a busy Monday morning in March 2022. Her white nurse's shoes squeaked against the polished floor as she rushed to start her shift. Being late wasn't like her, but today her old car had refused to start, forcing her to call an Uber. "I'm so sorry I'm late, Linda," Sarah apologized to the night shift nurse who was waiting at the nurse's station. Her braids swung forward as she quickly signed the attendance register. Linda waved off her apology with a tired smile. "Don't worry about it, honey, but you might want to head to room 305 first. We have a new patient who arrived last night, and he's been asking for assistance with his breakfast." Sarah nodded, quickly reviewing the patient's chart on her tablet as she walked. Marcus Washington, 32 years old, admitted after being discharged from Memorial Hospital. The cause of his paralysis was listed as a car accident from 5 years ago that had left him wheelchair-bound. When she knocked on the door of room 305, a warm voice called out, "Come in." Sarah pushed open the door and stopped in surprise. The man sitting in the wheelchair by the window wasn't what she had expected. He wore a crisp blue button-down shirt, and his wheelchair wasn't the standard hospital issue, but a sleek, modern model. His bright smile lit up his whole face as he turned to greet her. "You must be my morning nurse," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus." Sarah shook his hand, noting his firm grip and the elegant watch on his wrist. "I'm Sarah Jenkins. I'll be taking care of you during the day shift. I heard you needed help with breakfast." Marcus laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Actually, I already managed breakfast on my own. I just wanted to meet my day nurse as soon as possible. I hope you don't mind the little white lie." Sarah found herself smiling despite her professional demeanor. There was something about Marcus's personality that made it impossible to be annoyed at his minor deception. "Well, since you're here," Marcus continued, "maybe you could help me set up my laptop. I have some work calls to make, and these hospital tables are a bit tricky to adjust." As Sarah helped him position the table and set up his laptop, she noticed it was a top-of-the-line model with multiple screens. "You must do important work," she commented. "I'm a software engineer," Marcus explained, his fingers flying over the keyboard despite his condition. "I run my own tech company. We develop accessibility software for people with disabilities." Sarah found herself impressed not just by his achievements, but by how matter-of-factly he spoke about his work. There was no hint of boasting or self-pity in his voice. Over the next few hours, as Sarah went about her rounds, she kept finding reasons to pass by room 305. Marcus always had a friendly word or a joke to share. She learned that he was only staying at the rehabilitation center for 2 weeks while trying a new physical therapy program. During her lunch break, Sarah found herself sitting in the hospital cafeteria, thinking about Marcus. It wasn't just his handsome face or successful career that intrigued her. It was his spirit, the way he seemed to light up the room despite his circumstances. Earth to Sarah. Her colleague Maria waved a hand in front of her face. "You've been stirring that coffee for 5 minutes straight. What's got you so distracted?" Sarah blushed, realizing she had been daydreaming. "Just thinking about the new patient in 305, she admitted. Maria raised an eyebrow with a knowing smile. "Ah, Mr. Washington? He's quite charming, isn't he? But remember, Sarah, we have to maintain professional boundaries." Of course, Sarah agreed quickly, perhaps too quickly. She knew the rules about nurse-patient relationships, but something in her heart told her that this meeting was different, special, important. As she headed back to start her afternoon rounds, Sarah tried to push thoughts of Marcus's warm brown eyes and captivating smile out of her mind. She was a professional, after all. But life has a funny way of bringing people together, and sometimes the most unexpected meetings turn out to be the beginning of something extraordinary. Little did Sarah know that this ordinary Monday morning would be the first chapter of an extraordinary love story that would change not only her life but the lives of many others as well. 2 months had passed since Marcus's stay at the Atlanta Rehabilitation Center, and Sarah couldn't stop thinking about him. Their paths had crossed again at a local coffee shop where Marcus was having a business meeting. Now, they found themselves spending more time together outside the hospital. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Sarah sat nervously in her small apartment, smoothing down her yellow sundress. She was about to introduce Marcus to her family during their weekly dinner gathering. Her stomach twisted with anxiety as she checked her phone for the 10th time. "He's here," Sarah whispered to herself as her phone buzzed with Marcus's text. She hurried down to help him navigate the old building with no elevator. Marcus had insisted he could manage, but Sarah knew better than anyone how challenging the architecture could be. When they reached her family's house, Sarah's mother, Mrs. Jenkins, opened the door with a forced smile. Behind her, Sarah's younger sister Tracy and her aunt Patricia exchanged meaningful looks. The atmosphere grew tense as Marcus skillfully maneuvered his wheelchair through the doorway. "Welcome to our home," Mrs. Jenkins said politely, but Sarah could hear the uncertainty in her mother's voice. The same voice that had spent the last week asking questions like, "Are you sure about this, Sarah? And have you really thought this through?" During dinner, Marcus charmed everyone with stories about his work and his plans to create more accessible technology for people with disabilities. Sarah watched proudly as he handled her family's awkward questions with grace and humor. "So, Marcus," Aunt Patricia began, setting down her fork, "don't you think Sarah deserves someone who can, well, take care of her?" "Mom," Tracy exclaimed, embarrassed by her mother's directness. But Marcus remained calm. "Actually, Mrs. Patterson, I believe relationships are about taking care of each other. Yesterday, Sarah helped me reach a high shelf. Last week, I helped her fix her computer when it crashed with important patient files. We all have different abilities and challenges." Sarah reached under the table and squeezed his hand, grateful for his composed response. She had never felt more proud to be with him. Later that evening, as they sat in Marcus's adapted van outside Sarah's apartment, he grew unusually quiet. "Your aunt's question," he said finally, "has been on my mind too. Sarah, are you sure about us? About me? Your life would be easier with—" "Stop right there," Sarah interrupted, turning to face him. "My life isn't about what's easy. It's about what makes me happy. And you, Marcus Washington, make me happier than anyone I've ever known." Marcus's eyes glistened in the dim light. "But there will be challenges. Things we can't do like other couples. Vacations will need extra planning, houses will need modifications, and some places will just be inaccessible." Sarah smiled, taking his hand. "Then we'll plan better vacations, create better houses, and find better places. I'm not in love with what you can or can't do, Marcus. I'm in love with who you are." That night marked a turning point in their relationship. As Sarah watched Marcus's van drive away, she remembered something her grandmother used to say: "Love doesn't see with the eyes, it sees with the heart." Over the next few weeks, Sarah's family began to see what she saw in Marcus. Mrs. Jenkins started asking about him at their weekly calls, genuinely interested in his latest projects. Tracy invited them both to her son's birthday party, making sure the venue was wheelchair accessible. Marcus, too, faced his own battles. His parents worried about Sarah's motives, questioning if she was truly prepared for a life with their son. But Sarah's consistent love and support spoke louder than any words could. One evening, as they watched the sunset from Marcus's specially designed rooftop garden, he turned to Sarah and said, "You know what's funny? Everyone keeps talking about my disability, but with you, I've never felt more able in my life." Sarah leaned over and kissed him softly. In that moment, they both knew that what they had was stronger than any barrier the world could put between them. Their love wasn't about overcoming disabilities. It was about celebrating abilities. The ability to love, to support, and to see the best in each other. The autumn leaves danced around Sarah and Marcus as they strolled through Piedmont Park, her walking beside his wheelchair on their Sunday afternoon ritual. After 6 months of dating, they had fallen into a comfortable rhythm that made other couples stop and stare, not out of pity, but admiration. "My company just got approved for the new adaptive technology patent," Marcus announced, his eyes shining with excitement. "We're going to be able to help thousands of people with mobility issues work from home more efficiently." Sarah beamed with pride. She watched him work late nights on this project, his determination never wavering. "That's amazing. We should celebrate tonight." A group of children ran past them, one small boy stopping to stare at Marcus's high-tech wheelchair. Instead of being uncomfortable, Marcus smiled and showed the boy how his chair could spin in place. The child's eyes widened with delight. "It's like a transformer," the boy exclaimed before his mother called him away. Sarah loved these moments, when Marcus turned what others saw as limitations into opportunities to educate and inspire. It reminded her of why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. At work, things were changing too. Sarah had recently been promoted to head nurse at the rehabilitation center, partly because of her innovative suggestions for improving patient care. Many of her ideas had come from observing Marcus's daily routines and adaptations. You know what's funny? Sarah said as they stopped by their favorite coffee shop. People kept warning me that dating you would hold me back in life, but I've never felt more motivated to grow and achieve. Marcus nodded, skillfully maneuvering his chair through the cafe door. I know what you mean. My business has doubled since we started dating. Having you believe in me made me believe in myself more. The barista, Jenny, already knew their usual orders. The power couple is here, she called out cheerfully. One caramel macchiato and one black coffee with a shot of vanilla. As they settled at their specially reserved table, one Marcus had helped the cafe owner design to be more wheelchair-friendly. Sarah noticed a familiar face entering the coffee shop. It was Dr. Roberts, one of the doctors who had initially questioned their relationship. Sarah, Marcus, Dr. Roberts greeted them, looking somewhat embarrassed. I owe you both an apology. When I first heard about your relationship, I had my doubts. But seeing you two together these past months has changed my perspective about what's possible in life and love. Marcus reached for Sarah's hand across the table. Love isn't about what's possible, he said kindly. It's about what's real. Later that evening, they hosted a small dinner party at Marcus's accessible apartment. Their friends, a mix of Sarah's hospital colleagues and Marcus's tech industry partners, filled the space with laughter and conversation. I never thought I'd say this, Sarah's best friend Lisa admitted after a few glasses of wine, but you two make more sense than any couple I know. You're like those two puzzle pieces that don't look like they should fit, but create the prettiest part of the picture. As their guests helped clean up, Sarah insisted, despite Marcus having a cleaning service. Marcus pulled Sarah aside to his home office. The wall was covered with photos of them, at the park, at his company's launch party, at her sister's wedding, where he had proudly led the first dance in his wheelchair. Sarah, he said seriously, I want you to move in with me. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Are you sure? I mean, my apartment isn't exactly accessible, and moving all my stuff. Marcus laughed. I've already designed a renovation plan to make this place perfect for both of us. Plus, I kind of need my live-in nurse, he added with a wink. Ex-nurse, Sarah corrected him, giggling. I'm your girlfriend now. As they rejoined their friends in the living room, Sarah looked around at the life they were building together. It wasn't the conventional love story she had imagined as a little girl, but it was better. It was real, it was challenging, and it was uniquely theirs. Their love story wasn't just about breaking down barriers. It was about building something new. A modern love story that proved that true connection transcends physical limitations, and that the strongest relationships aren't built on what each person can do, but on who they help each other become. The proposal. The Jenkins family reunion was in full swing at Atlanta's Botanical Gardens. Sarah had spent weeks ensuring everything would be accessible for Marcus, who had become a beloved figure at family gatherings over the past year. What she didn't know was that Marcus had spent even longer planning something special of his own. Sarah, honey, can you help set up the dessert table? Mrs. Jenkins called out, winking at Marcus when Sarah wasn't looking. She was now one of Marcus's biggest supporters and had helped him plan every detail of this day. As Sarah walked away, Marcus nodded to Sarah's cousin Michael, who quickly wheeled him to a private area behind the rose garden. There, hidden from view, Marcus's brother James helped him with something they'd been practicing for weeks, a revolutionary mobility device that would allow him to stand for short periods. Meanwhile, Tracy gathered the family members, directing them to the garden's central gazebo. Everyone was in on the surprise except Sarah, who was still arranging pies and cookies, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Sarah, Tracy called out, can you come to the gazebo? Grandma wants a family photo. Sarah hurried over, noticing that Marcus wasn't in his usual spot. Where's Marcus? She asked, looking around with concern. He'll be here, her mother assured her with a suspicious smile. Suddenly, soft music began playing from hidden speakers. Sarah's favorite song, At Last by Etta James, filled the garden air. The family parted like a sea, creating a path to the gazebo's entrance. There stood Marcus. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. Marcus was standing, actually standing, supported by a sleek, almost invisible mobility device. He was dressed in a sharp navy suit, his eyes shining with love and determination. With careful, practiced movements, Marcus took 3 steps forward. The family watched in emotional silence as he slowly lowered himself to one knee, the mobility device providing perfect balance. "Sarah Jenkins," his voice rang out clear and strong, though his hands trembled slightly. "When I first met you at the rehabilitation center, I thought you were just another nurse. But you saw me, really saw me, not as a man in a wheelchair, but as a man with dreams, hopes, and love to give." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she watched the man she loved do something she never expected to see. Her mother pressed a tissue into her hand. "Every day with you has been an adventure," Marcus continued. "You've never seen my disability as a barrier, but rather as just another part of our unique love story. You've supported my dreams, challenged me to be better, and loved me unconditionally." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a vintage-style ring box. "This was my grandmother's ring. She gave it to me before she passed away, telling me to save it for someone extraordinary. Someone who could see past the surface to the heart beneath. Someone like you." Opening the box revealed a beautiful antique diamond ring, sparkling in the afternoon sun. "Sarah Jenkins, will you marry me?" The garden fell silent. Even the birds seemed to pause their singing, waiting for her answer. Sarah stepped forward, tears flowing freely now. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes. 1,000 times yes." As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, their family erupted in cheers and applause. James quickly brought Marcus's wheelchair forward, and Sarah helped him transition back into it, kissing him deeply once he was settled. "How did you manage to stand?" she asked, still in awe. "I've been working with a new mobility device my company developed," Marcus explained. "I wanted to give you a proposal you'd never forget." "Every moment with you is unforgettable," Sarah replied, touching the ring on her finger. The family surrounded them with hugs and congratulations. Mrs. Jenkins couldn't stop crying, and even Sarah's usually stoic father was wiping away tears. Later that evening, as the sun set over the botanical gardens, Sarah and Marcus sat together, watching their families celebrate. The ring sparkled on Sarah's finger, a symbol not just of their love, but of their willingness to overcome any obstacle together. "You know," Marcus said softly, "they say love can move mountains. But I think sometimes it just helps you stand up long enough to propose to the woman of your dreams." Sarah leaned down to kiss him, knowing that their greatest adventure was just beginning. The next 3 months flew by in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Sarah and Marcus had chosen the Crystal Gardens venue, a beautiful glass-enclosed space that was not only fully accessible but also stunning. What Sarah didn't know was that Marcus was orchestrating another surprise behind the scenes, one that would change their wedding day forever. "The venue looks perfect," Sarah exclaimed, watching as the wedding planner, Maria, directed workers in hanging crystal chandeliers. "I still can't believe we're getting married in 2 weeks." Marcus squeezed her hand, fighting to keep his secret. For the past months, he'd been working with a team of specialists on a revolutionary exoskeleton prototype, spending early mornings and late nights at his company's lab while telling Sarah he was handling wedding arrangements. "Sarah, darling," Mrs. Jenkins called out, rushing over with fabric swatches. "We need to finalize the aisle runner. It needs to be sturdy enough for Marcus's wheelchair but still elegant." Marcus smiled knowingly. If everything went according to plan, you wouldn't be using his wheelchair for that special moment. During their menu tasting, Marcus excused himself for what he claimed was a business call. Instead, he wheeled himself to a private room where Dr. Chen, his physical therapist, was waiting. "How's the training going?" Dr. Chen asked, helping Marcus into the exoskeleton for their daily practice session. "Better," Marcus replied, gripping the parallel bars. "I can walk nearly 50 steps now without stopping. Do you think I'll be ready?" Dr. Chen nodded encouragingly. "You've made incredible progress. Just remember to take it slow and steady on the big day." Meanwhile, Sarah was busy with her own preparations, unaware of her fiancé's secret training sessions. She had chosen a dress that would complement Marcus in his wheelchair, not too full at the bottom, easier to dance together at their reception. One evening, while reviewing seating arrangements in their living room, Sarah noticed Marcus wincing as he shifted in his chair. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. "You've seemed more tired lately." Marcus quickly composed himself. "Just wedding stress," he assured her. and some long days at work finishing up projects before our honeymoon. Sarah leaned over to massage his shoulders. Don't work too hard. I don't care about anything except becoming your wife. The next day, during her final dress fitting, Sarah's mother watched her daughter twirl in front of the mirror. You look beautiful, sweetheart, Mrs. Jenkins said, dabbing her eyes. Marcus is going to be speechless. I just want everything to be perfect for him, Sarah replied, smoothing the silk fabric. The accessible dance floor is installed, and we've arranged everything so he can move freely during the reception. What Sarah didn't know was that Mrs. Jenkins had been helping Marcus coordinate with his medical team, making sure there would be trained professionals discreetly present at the wedding in case he needed assistance with the exoskeleton. As the wedding day drew closer, Marcus increased his training sessions. Each step was a challenge, but the thought of walking towards Sarah kept him going. His tech team worked around the clock, making final adjustments to ensure the exoskeleton would be completely concealed under his wedding suit. The night before the wedding, they held their rehearsal dinner at their favorite accessible restaurant. Sarah noticed Marcus seemed nervous, distracted. Having second thoughts, she teased, though her eyes showed a hint of worry. Marcus took her hand across the table. Never. I'm just thinking about tomorrow. It's going to be more amazing than you can imagine. Later that night, as they parted ways to follow the tradition of spending the night before the wedding apart, Marcus pulled Sarah close for a long kiss. Tomorrow will change everything, he whispered. Because we'll be married? Sarah asked. Marcus smiled mysteriously. That, and so much more. Just promise me one thing. When you arrive at the church tomorrow morning, keep an open mind and an open heart. Sarah looked puzzled but nodded. As she watched Marcus wheel away, she had no idea that in less than 12 hours, she would witness a miracle that would make their wedding day unforgettable. Dawn broke over Atlanta on Sarah and Marcus's wedding day. Sarah woke up early in her parents' house, butterflies dancing in her stomach. As she sipped her morning coffee, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Meet me at the venue at 8 a.m. Come alone. Don't ask questions. Trust me. Sarah's heart raced. The wedding wasn't scheduled until 11 a.m. What could be so important? Her mother, pretending to be surprised by the text, encouraged her to go. But my hair appointment, Sarah protested. I'll reschedule it, Mrs. Jenkins said with a mysterious smile. Some things are more important. Sarah arrived at the Crystal Gardens exactly at 8 a.m. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls, creating rainbow patterns on the polished floor. The space was empty except for Marcus's brother James, who stood waiting by the entrance. Where's Marcus? Sarah asked, her voice echoing in the vast space. James pointed towards the garden area. He's waiting for you by the fountain. Sarah walked through the garden arch, her casual dress swishing against the dewy grass. She expected to see Marcus in his wheelchair, but the pathway was empty. Confused, she rounded the corner near the fountain. And there he stood. Marcus was standing, actually standing, in his wedding suit, supported by an elegant, barely visible exoskeleton. His smile was brighter than the morning sun. Marcus, Sarah whispered, her hand covering her mouth. How? Surprise, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've been working on this for months. My company developed this new exoskeleton technology, and I've been training every day to use it. Sarah walked closer, tears streaming down her face. Marcus took a step toward her, then another and another. His movements were careful but steady. I wanted to give you something special, he continued. Today, I'm going to walk down the aisle with you, dance with you, stand beside you as we say our vows. Sarah reached out to touch him, afraid he might disappear like a dream. But how did you keep this secret? All those business meetings were actually physical therapy sessions, Marcus finished. Your mom helped coordinate everything. The whole family kept the secret. Even the venue staff were in on it. Dr. Chen emerged from behind a pillar, along with Marcus's medical team. We'll be here all day, the doctor assured them. Everything is perfectly safe. Sarah couldn't stop crying. But Marcus, you didn't need to do this. I love you exactly as you are. I know, Marcus said, wiping away her tears. That's exactly why I wanted to do it. Because you never asked me to change, never saw me as incomplete. You gave me the strength to push myself, not because you needed it, but because your love made me believe anything was possible." He took another step closer, now standing right in front of her. "But this isn't just about walking down the aisle. This technology we developed, it's going to help thousands of people. Our love story helped create something that will change lives." Sarah wrapped her arms around him, feeling the subtle hum of the exoskeleton beneath his suit. "You never cease to amaze me, Marcus Washington. Just wait until you see our first dance." He grinned. "I've been practicing for weeks." They spent the next hour together as Marcus showed Sarah how the exoskeleton worked. He demonstrated how he could sit and stand, walk and turn. Each movement was a small miracle, a testament to human determination and the power of love. As the wedding guests began to arrive, Sarah rushed off to finally start her hair and makeup appointments. Her heart felt like it might burst with joy and love. "See you at the altar," Marcus called after her. "I'll be the one standing proud, waiting for his bride." Sarah turned back one last time, memorizing the image of Marcus standing in the morning light. Their wedding day had barely begun, but it had already become more magical than she could have ever imagined. Little did she know, Marcus had one more surprise planned for their ceremony, one that would leave not a dry eye in the house. The Crystal Gardens buzzed with excitement as 300 guests filled the seats. The glass walls sparkled with afternoon sunlight, and white roses adorned every corner. No one except the immediate family knew about Marcus's surprise, making the anticipation even more electric. Sarah waited in the bridal room, her white dress flowing like water around her. Her hands trembled as her mother adjusted her veil. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, tears already forming in her eyes. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," Sarah replied, thinking about Marcus standing at the altar, actually standing. Meanwhile, in another room, Marcus was making final adjustments to his exoskeleton with Dr. Chen's help. His brother James stood nearby, ready to assist if needed. "Remember," Dr. Chen instructed, "take it slow. We practiced this 100 times." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding. This isn't just about walking down the aisle anymore. This is about showing Sarah and the world that love knows no boundaries. The wedding music began. The guests stood, expecting to see Marcus in his wheelchair at the altar. Instead, gasps filled the room as Marcus walked slowly but confidently down the aisle, escorted by his parents on either side. People began to cry, understanding the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "Is he walking?" Someone whispered. "It's a miracle," another guest exclaimed. Marcus reached the altar and turned to face the crowd, standing tall and proud, his eyes fixed on the entrance, waiting for his bride. The music changed to the bridal march. The doors opened, and Sarah appeared on her father's arm. She was a vision in white, but what struck everyone was her radiant smile. She didn't walk down the aisle. She floated, her eyes locked with Marcus's. When they reached the altar, Mr. Jenkins placed Sarah's hand in Marcus's. For the first time in their relationship, they stood eye to eye. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today to witness not just a marriage, but a testimony to the power of love, determination, and the human spirit." As they exchanged vows, Marcus and Sarah held hands tightly, standing together as equals. Their words echoed through the hushed room. "Sarah," Marcus said, his voice strong and clear, "I promise to stand by you in every way possible, to rise to every challenge, and to love you more with each passing day." Sarah's voice quivered with emotion as she responded, "Marcus, I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams, and to love you unconditionally, today and always." The ring exchange was particularly poignant. Marcus, standing steady, placed the ring on Sarah's finger without assistance, something he had practiced countless times. "By the power vested in me," the minister proclaimed, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Marcus pulled Sarah close, and their kiss was met with thunderous applause. Some guests were openly sobbing, others cheering. It was more than a wedding. It was a moment of triumph. As they turned to face their guests, the minister announced, "I present to you, Mr. and Mrs. Washington." The couple walked down the aisle together, step by step, as rose petals showered down from above. The exoskeleton worked perfectly, allowing Marcus to move naturally beside his bride. At the reception entrance, they paused for photos. Marcus stood proudly next to Sarah, no wheelchair in sight, their families gathered around them, everyone beaming with joy and pride. I have one more surprise, Marcus whispered to Sarah as they entered the reception hall. The DJ announced their first dance, and Marcus led Sarah to the dance floor. The opening notes of At Last filled the air, the same song from his proposal. Marcus had practiced this dance for months, and now, holding his wife in his arms, they swayed to the music as naturally as any other couple. Guests watched in awe as Marcus and Sarah moved across the dance floor, their love story coming full circle. This wasn't just a wedding dance. It was a declaration that with love, technology, and determination, anything was possible. As the song ended, Marcus pulled Sarah close and whispered, "This is just the beginning of our miracles together." Sarah looked up at her husband, standing tall and strong, and knew that their love story would inspire generations to come. 6 months after their miraculous wedding, Sarah and Marcus's story had spread far beyond Atlanta. A video of Marcus walking down the aisle had gone viral, touching millions of hearts worldwide. But for the newlyweds, this was just the beginning of their journey to help others. "Look at this, Sarah," Marcus called from his home office one morning. He was sitting in his wheelchair. They had learned to balance his use of the exoskeleton with regular rest periods. Sarah walked over, still in her nursing scrubs after her night shift. "Another 100 emails from people asking about the exoskeleton," he said, scrolling through his inbox. "We need to do something bigger than just answering emails." Sarah placed her hands on his shoulders, reading the messages. Many were from disabled individuals and their families, all hoping for the same miracle they had witnessed at the wedding. "I have an idea," Sarah said, pulling up a chair beside him. "What if we start a foundation? We could help provide adaptive technology to people who can't afford it." Marcus's eyes lit up. "The Washington Foundation for Adaptive Technology," he mused. "I like it." Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly to establish the foundation. Marcus used his tech company's resources to develop more affordable versions of the exoskeleton, while Sarah's medical experience helped them understand patients' needs better. Their first recipient was a young girl named Maya, a 12-year-old who had lost mobility after a car accident. The day Maya took her first steps with the exoskeleton, her parents crying tears of joy, Sarah and Marcus knew they had found their true calling. "This is better than any wedding gift we received," Sarah whispered to Marcus as they watched Maya walk towards her parents. The foundation grew rapidly. Marcus's company dedicated an entire division to developing new adaptive technologies, while Sarah left her nursing job to work full-time as the foundation's medical director. Together, they created a program that not only provided technology, but also offered support, training, and hope. Their home became a testament to their mission. One room was converted into a small museum of adaptive technology, showing the evolution from basic wheelchairs to the latest exoskeletons. They hosted monthly support group meetings where people could try different devices and share their stories. One evening, as they sat on their accessible patio watching the sunset, Marcus turned to Sarah. "Remember when your aunt asked if you were sure about marrying me?" Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand. "I never imagined our marriage would help so many people," he continued. "We provided exoskeletons to 50 people this year alone, and our research team is developing new technologies every day." "And it all started because you wanted to stand at our wedding," Sarah smiled. Their story had also changed attitudes in the medical community. Sarah was frequently invited to speak at hospitals and rehabilitation centers about the importance of seeing beyond disabilities. Marcus's company became a leader in accessible technology, with major tech firms seeking partnerships. The media dubbed them the couple that redefined possible. But for Sarah and Marcus, their greatest achievement was the quiet moments, helping someone take their first steps, seeing families reunited in ways they never thought possible, watching hope return to eyes that had lost it. 1 year after their wedding, they organized a grand gala for the foundation. As Marcus stood at the podium, Sarah by his side, he addressed a room full of supporters, recipients, and future hopefuls. "When I first met Sarah, I thought my disability might prevent us from having a normal life together," he said. "But Sarah taught me that there's no such thing as a normal life. There's just life, and it's beautiful in all its forms." Sarah wiped away tears as he continued. "Today, we're not just providing technology, we're providing possibilities. Every person who receives an exoskeleton or any other adaptive device isn't just gaining mobility, they're gaining hope." The foundation's success became their greatest wedding gift, the gift of giving back. Their love story had transformed from a personal miracle into a movement that touched countless lives. As they drove home from the gala that night, Sarah looked at Marcus and smiled. You know what? Everyone thought I was crazy for marrying a disabled man, but I think I'm the luckiest woman in the world. Marcus grinned. No, my love, the world is lucky to have you. You saw possibility where others saw limitation, and because of that, thousands of lives will never be the same. Their story had come full circle, proving that the greatest miracles often come wrapped in unexpected packages, and that love truly knows no boundaries.